Hi, I'm Sarah Sedwick, and welcome to my online mentorship program group session for October 2017. It's October 29th, and today we're going to do a demonstration of my favorite workshop exercise, stroke economy. So the idea behind this exercise is that we do 4 quick paintings, and we're going to do the first one in 25 brushstrokes, the second painting in 20 strokes, and then 15 and 10. And one of the ideas is that we don't want to get bogged down. We want to know when to say when we've done enough with our brush work and move on, whether it's to another area of the painting or just call a painting good and move on to the next painting. Because overworking is a big problem. It's one of my big problems. And sometimes I feel like my main struggle as a painter is to stop myself before I ruin what it is that I'm working on. So setting a time limit when you're doing a painting, setting a brushstroke limit certainly will shake you out of that tendency to overwork. That's the idea. So I posted a picture of my subject on our Facebook page. I'm going to be painting a pomegranate today because it is the season. Last year I did this demo also in October 2016, and that video is on YouTube if you want to check it out. I did a pumpkin last year, so I thought I would do something different this year. I've got my pomegranate. I've got window light and a spotlight on this subject matter. So let's talk about materials. I'm just working on a cheap stretched canvas, 12 by 16, that I'm going to divide up into 4 like a window pane. Use a disposable paper palette, as I like to do. All I do to prepare for these little stroke economy paintings is just a block in and maybe a little bit of work into the shadows, but it's pretty basic. And so for that, I'm going to mix up something like I would do for an underpainting, a warm neutral brown, red plus yellow plus a little bit of blue. And I should probably do some color mixing. Maybe I'll do the block in first. Red plus yellow is the pure all red, and the cad yellow and a little bit of ultramarine blue makes my underpainting color that I'll want to use. All right. So we'll start with 25 brush strokes, and I'm going to just block in the basic drawing first. These marks don't count toward your brush strokes. So I have done stroke economy once before with a pomegranate, about 2 years ago probably, in a workshop. It's always a challenge. But when you're picking out something to try this exercise with, probably it's a good idea to stick to something that's a simple form. An apple, an orange. I was looking at the persimmons. I have some persimmons also, and I was looking at those and I was going, I can't deal with that green top thing in stroke economy. It just won't. It's too much. But it would be a good challenge. But you don't want, I don't think you want too much complicated architecture to deal with. So an apple, a banana. I think that's enough of a challenge for this. Okay, so that's pretty good, you know, as far as a block-in is concerned. I've shown the form. This is the line. This is the bedbug line, A, right? The terminator line where the form shadow and the light side of the object meet. We were all just introduced to the term bedbug line recently and have been having fun illustrating it. And I'm showing myself just a little bit of drawing information about what's going on up there in the stem, whatever that is, and my cast shadow. And then, you know, maybe I'll look at the background and just check in with it and say, well, what's going on back there? Where's the light hitting the most strongly? And do I see a place where maybe it divides? So maybe I have the background as it's a little darker in this quadrant and all here is more light stuff. Maybe I'll do that. And that's it. That's the block in for this. And now I need to kind of mix some paint. I want something for the light side of the pomegranate, something for the shadow side, something for the cast shadow, and something for the general color note of the negative space. Beyond that, I'm going to change it with my paintbrush. And each time, you know, it's not just that I'm really going to pay attention to the space and the intervals between my brush strokes, but each time I take my paintbrush back to the canvas, back to the palette, sorry, I'm going to be trying to get a different paint. Probably no two of these brush strokes will be made with the very same paint. I may go back into the same pile, but I'll bend it just a little bit, you know, just get something slightly different. So no two brush strokes have the exact same color on them. But in order to do that, I like to just have some basic, this is my underpainting stuff. We'll get that out of the way. I like to have some basic stuff just to be going for. And what I'm doing right now is mixing the Purell red and the bismuth yellow. It's really difficult to lighten reds from the tube with white because they turn pink. Now I may end up wanting a little bit of white in there. Maybe I can grab some of the bismuth yellow that was already tinted. That's like adding yellow and white. It's a bonus, efficient. But if I try to lighten red too much by adding white to it, and this is just a tint of the Purell red straight, I'll get pink. And the pomegranate isn't pink. The light parts are a saturated red, and the dark parts are just a darker, richer red. This is Alizarin Crimson and Purell red. The Alizarin Crimson is so transparent, and I think that Purell red is listed as either transparent or semi-opaque as well. Probably transparent. In mixture, they're looking pretty transparent there. And this pomegranate is very saturated, so I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave these colors fairly pure, not bringing in any of the complement, but I will do that with my brush when I get there. And what that might look like, you know, we know that the complementary color of red, maybe I'll pull a little bit of this green in. This is green that's made from the phthalo blue red shade and the chrome tin yellow. Light value green, that's for sure. Maybe mid value. So I was saying, when I go to pull in some of the complement to dull down my reds, what's maroon perylene and alizarin crimson going to do together? That might look like me bringing in a greenish blue, this phthalo blue, rather than going straight to green if I want to keep it really dark, because adding yellow, adding blue and yellow, adding green is going to lighten it. If I want to lighten it just a little bit, maybe I want that. Oh, that's brownish, but that's actually beautiful. This maroon perylene is it's almost like, it's pretty brownish. It's redder than a burnt sienna would be, and it's much darker of a value, but it's pretty brownish. It has an interesting texture. It's really brown compared to alizarin crimson. Color theory to work out for the eyes. Okay, so I've got some stuff for the pomegranate, something for the light, maybe the mid-tone, and these are for the darks possibly. And for my negative space, that cast shadow, it has a part of it that's more blue and then a part of it that's more of kind of a greenish gray. Maybe I'll go into my brown, add some ultramarine blue to it. You all see what's going on here? Maybe some of the muddy white. Since I'm mixing for a dark value color anyway, the muddy white's not going to hurt me too much. I just need to be aware that it's got some pink in it, so it's going to bring that quality to it. Yeah, it's a little warmer than I see it, but maybe it's okay. A little more ultramarine blue tint. When I'm mixing colors, I will often just divide the pile in half and move it over and keep changing it so I can kind of walk it back in the opposite direction if I decide that I want to. And then something for the main kind of area of the negative space. It's a gray. This is a piece of drawing paper it's a lot darker than white, but the pomegranate is such a dark value object that gray paper feels pretty light next to it, but it's not. It's a pretty dark gray, but in the direct light. And so there's what I basically did was I started with the color I used for my block in, that orange. And I'm making a gray out of it by just adding more blue. It's a blue and orange. It's a neutral mixed from blue and orange, complementary color pair. I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to use a number 4 flat for this. Use the biggest brush that you're comfortable with for the size of your painting. And I'm gonna start. So I'm loading up my brush with about as much paint as it can hold. I may even grab some of the solvent-free gel to sort of loosen up the paint and help it load onto the brush, because you know this brush stroke is going to start for me when the brush touches down onto the canvas, and it ends when I pick it up, and so it can be as long and winding of a brush stroke as I want it to be. But if I run out of paint, that brush stroke is over whether I want it to be over or not. So it behooves you to really load the brush up with enough paint. I still haven't lifted the brush up yet, but when the brush stops moving, you'll notice my eyes are going back to the still life. So if I've got my brush, I'm dripping. If I've got my brush touching the canvas and moving, chances are I'm not going to take my eyes off of it. But if I stop my brush moving, then I will look down at the still life. Okay, so that was one brush stroke. And I'm gonna kind of wipe my brush off in the rag in my hand, and I'm not gonna clean it exhaustively or swish it around in my Gamsol or anything, because I'm really just gonna switch down to another red. So I don't think I need to get it so clean. And maybe some of that color that's left on there will even help me, who knows? Think about using different brush pressures. This is feeling very saturated. Okay. That was 4. That's really dark. Really dark. That's what I wanted. 5. 6. Got more out of that one. 7. Now there's this light piece right here. It's getting a lot of reflection from the ground, I think. So it's almost like cooler. And so I am kind of blending in between brushstrokes, but I'm doing it by varying the pressure of the brush. So maybe I'll start off a brushstroke pressing down harder on the canvas, but then I will let it sort of trail off and maybe move it back and forth. Anyone counting? I think that is like 13. If I'm wildly incorrect, someone let me know. Counting and painting is the hardest part of this for me. Not a natural thing for me to count while painting or ever. And so you might ask yourself, like, how is this really going to affect my quote unquote real painting? Well, so when I do something like a passage, like I just did, like that stem, I do try to do that as efficiently, as simply as I possibly can in 1 or 2 strokes if possible. Because it just has a nice clean look and feeling, and I like that. That's 16. So I only have a few left here. Let's get some of this negative space taken care of. And I want, and you know, my goal isn't that you would paint all of the negative space in one of these little exercises either, but I want to see if you have the extra strokes. That's really like the lighter part that's on the front, not as dark as I want the back part of that cast shadow to be. I want, it's an opportunity to show the value relationship between the negative space and the positive space, right? And it's another opportunity to redraw the contour lines of your object. That's why getting into the negative space in these stroke economy exercises can be good and important. It isn't that the goal is to cover every square inch of this little exercise canvas right here. But when I really load up my brush with that cast shadow paint, look how much I can accomplish with just one stroke. Push down really hard to just really squeegee that paint out of the back of the brush. So if I'm getting messy at this edge, yes, I am, but I'm also softening that edge. Got a little out of control. And so is this 24 or 23?
23.
Oh, good. Because I want 2 more.
You could say 22 then.
No, that one can be 24.
You're cheating, right?
Yeah, you're just cheating yourself. I don't care. Okay, 24. Now I wanted my last one for what? The highlight, right? I'm gonna mix up some white, maybe some of that bismuth yellow, maybe a little bit of my pink, the Purell red plus white pink, and 1 brush stroke.
No pressure.
No. Yeah, that didn't work. 1 more. Okay, more or less. 26. Okay, so that's the general idea. I've got the light side, the shadow side, the cast shadow, and the highlight. And that's the basics of 3-dimensional form on a 2-dimensional plane. So I could, nitpick this and say that maybe the reflected light is too light and whatever, but it's okay. Okay, and so my palette got a little bit messed up. But the great thing that happens with this, especially if you stick to the same subject matter, for your palette colors are going to get mixed into each other between each one, and they'll get more complex, more interesting, and more naturalistic as you move from one of these small paintings to the next. So basically, I'm going to take my palette and just clean it up. I'm going to mix like with like pretty much. I'm going to mix the dark stuff that I used for that dark side of the pomegranate into each other, and I'm going to take the mid reds and mix those into each other. And maybe I'll say, oh, well, that light red that I made, that wasn't quite yellow enough. I want a little more yellow in this for the next round. And so I just clean myself up, and it's good practice reorganizing your palette in between each one of these. I'm a big fan of saying that, when your palette gets out of control, your painting isn't going to be far behind. And so practicing checking in with your palette and just reorganizing it, reorganizing your mental process as well is a great thing to practice. So you just move right into the next one. If you're getting bogged down, set a timer, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And I'm not going to draw from my first one. I am going to look at my object. You can even, give it a twist in between each one so that you're looking at a different side. That'll keep you on your toes. Because we do get into these ideas about things. We have these ideas of what things look like: glass bottles, flowers, apples, and they aren't helpful because they really, we don't really know what we think we know about what's visually going on, what color things are. It's amazing how little we know, and it is also amazing simultaneously how much we think we do know. So, who was it that says, stop painting nouns? All right, so there's the line, the bedbug line, and the basics of the form. I'll go back to my brush. Number 4 brush. And if you notice, I usually start with the lightest and most saturated parts of the pomegranate. It's just kind of an easy place for me to start, but I also talk a lot about vulnerable colors. I often want to start with my lightest and most saturated colors while everything is still clean and there's nothing else on the canvas around to mess it up. Like especially if I have yellow, I want to put the yellow down while everything is nice and clean before I get any dark colors around to mix into them. But also, I like to start this exercise with the main brightest and most saturated light note because I can paint the other stuff over it and it sort of works and looks nice, whereas it's more difficult to paint light colors over darker colors. Now I'll move into some midtones, some very saturated midtones. The danger is that I'm gonna think that I've got everything figured out about this pomegranate now at this point, because I've already done this once before, or I'm gonna paint from this one. But I gotta keep looking back at my subject and trying to stay in that beginner's mindset. I have never seen this pomegranate before. I don't know anything about this. And I'm not painting by numbers and I'm not coloring in. These are all hard things to do. But we're seeing what is like what else. 3. 4. That was nice. This brush is, I'm switching brushes before my next one. This brush is wasted. It is on the verge of being thrown away. 5. That was sort of a fudgy one. I twisted it around, but I didn't really pick it up. Let's go in the darks. 6. Back to the palette, really mix some stuff around, get something that you like. And get a lot of it on the brush. 7. 8. No throwaway brush strokes. 9. 'Oh my gosh. I like it. 10. But I still have 10 more. $11. Maybe I can bring this around and no, I don't have enough paint there. Kind of softly blending it into the shadow side there. Still looking at what's darker, lighter than what. 12. Do I want to take another stroke for that occlusion shadow? Maybe I do. $13. You learn a lot about what you can do by moving the brush backwards, what kind of blending you can do, depending on how much paint you have on the ground. Lightest part of the negative space. I'm going to redraw the contour line of this pomegranate up here. All right, how much paint is left in here? Not enough. 14. Yuck. I got a lot of paint in the brush that time. And I was really, really able to cover a lot of ground with it. I still got more in there. Well, painting on the edge. It's kind of cheating, but okay. 16, 15, 16. Let's go back into the pomegranate and get those highlights. Did I like what I used for the highlight last time? Do I want it to be different? Do I want it to be a little pinker? I kind of liked it. It just wasn't really sticking the way I want to. So I'm going to make sure I put some of that solvent-free gel medium in it this time to get it to stick. It can be really difficult to get paint to stick to other paint. And that's when adding mediums becomes very helpful. It makes the paint stickier. 18. Reload. 19. Very satisfying. I've got one left. What should I do? My inclination is to come in here and retouch the darkness right in there. Nice to have a mirror automatically. This video camera, I can look in and judge. If you don't have a mirror in your studio, consider bringing one in. It's pretty helpful for showing you any problems that you might be having. Yeah, okay. Don't dither, just do something. And take them all, you know, if you think you're done at 18, take 2 more, because the purpose of this exercise is just show you, you know, where you went too far. So go too far and show yourself. That didn't really do much, but okay, 20. Okay, and so this is going to be 15 strokes. squinting and trying to simplify, even when I'm doing the drawing block in. What does that big shadow shape really look like as it's crossing the form? In the simplest possible terms. Because all I really need to do is get the light side and the shadow side, the cast shadow, and the highlight. I gave it a little twist, so I'm seeing some slightly different colors in the top of the pomegranate here. Some slightly more yellowish, peachy reds. Whoa, that's very orange. Two. Three. Four. Five. You're out of paint. The brushstroke ends whether you want it to or not. Six. Seven. Not what I wanted. Eight. Nine. Nope. I'm not getting any paint on there. Come on. Ten. My cat just opened the door and busted in here and is looking at me. Who are you talking to? Oh, 11. $12. Kind of a weird one. $13. grabbing some of the paint from that last stroke and pulling it in there. 14 and one more for the highlight. $15. All right, so with 10, it really becomes important to get the most bang for your brush stroke. You want to load that brush up with a lot of thick paint. 1. That is 1. It's a little bit lighter. I'm going to come over top with that lighter piece. Three. Mm-hmm. 'So when the paint is gone, you will start blending and picking up all the other stuff that you did. And that's what's happening to me right now. I don't really mind. 4. Something a little darker. Next. 5. Hmm. 6. 7. Gotta do something with that stem. 8. Nine. Like how I connected that so I could have just one. Cheating. And if I've got one more, what'll I do?
Background.
I think it's more important to me to do the occlusion shadow. I want to really sit it down in its shadow there. The lily pad for the frog to sit on. Yay, 10. Yeah, you know, it it starts to make the 25 brushstroke painting feel a little bit fussy, doesn't it?
Mm.
And so you would think to yourself, well, of course, like I would need 25 brushstrokes at least for any like real painting. But the idea isn't that we're going to ever do a whole painting that's an actual painting of ours in 25 brushstrokes. The idea is that we would handle an area of a larger painting in as few brushstrokes as possible. So maybe bring an element of a 15-stroke painting into a larger painting, especially in an area that isn't your focal point, that you're just trying to show us the basics and get out so that our eye doesn't get bogged down there, and you keep your viewer's attention in the areas where you're going to spend more time, where you're going to use more brushstrokes. This is a really good technique for areas where you just don't want to beat us over the head with it. And I absolutely do this.